It's not easy to understand. It's not easy to see. Or people just don't plain believe you. Does that sound familiar? Hey, my sunflowers and squares. My name is Brenda, and welcome to BPD Squared. Today, we're going to discuss why people don't talk about mental illness. Now, I'm going to come at this from both sides of the spectrum. One from the side of the person that actually suffers from mental illness, and also from the side of people who we like to call neurotypical in the community. Let me start by reiterating a point that has been made throughout time, is that mental illness is very difficult to understand, mainly because it is an illness that is not easily seen. When you look at a person who suffers from depression, you may think, oh, the person is just not getting enough rest at night. Or if you see a person suffering from anxiety, you may think the person is just overreacting and just is ill prepared in how to handle the situation at hand. Unfortunately, this is not true. The other misconception is how extreme is too extreme. The problem is that people see our suffering, and if it doesn't reach to a level where people feel that they need to be hospitalized or they need to be strapped down or put into, a straitjacket, then you can't possibly be suffering from mental illness in that way. Unfortunately, Hollywood has really messed up everybody's minds and messed up everybody's view of what mental illness really is. Sure, you have people who will have outward bursts of emotion. They may be angry or violent or overly sad, or just kind of go into a moment of dissociation where they just fall into themselves and they just stop functioning entirely. But there are also there's also the quiet responses. I believe I'm one of the people that suffers from quiet BPD. I don't always have outward bursts of anger. I don't always have fits of rage and just go off on people in a moment. I'm more of an implosive person than I am explosive. And because of that quiet suffering, you get hit with all these different labels. Sometimes you're seen as weak, or you're seen as lazy, or you're seen as just non-functional, or you don't care. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that it's so hard to deal with because you want to express how much you're suffering. You want to let people know how much you're suffering. But again, it goes back to how extreme is too extreme. If you start expressing it, then all of a sudden it's too much. And there's that constant level of people just feeling stuck. Which brings me to the point about when it comes to talking about mental illness from a suffering standpoint. When we try to express what's going on with us, it's I'm going to say this a lot. It's very difficult to get people to understand where we're coming from, because it's not something that is easy to explain. It's really not. Because it's one thing to just say, I feel sad, but there is a difference between feeling sad and sad to the point where you can't do anything else but feel sad. And even speaking of that, feeling sad seems to be one of the things that a lot of people connect with mental illness as well. Anything that is on a negative spectrum is what's considered viable for mental illness. You have to be sad or depressed or tired or hurting yourself or angry or this, that, and the third in order for people to even consider the fact you may be suffering. Nobody really recognizes the fact that overexcitement, overjoy, and mania basically is also a form of suffering, because you can't, as much as you can't control how upset and depressed you get, a lot of times you can't control how happy you get either. So again, to go back to the point, it makes it difficult to really, for a person that suffers, it makes it very difficult for us to actually express what it is we're suffering through. Because when you aren't able to process it in the same mind as a person who suffers from depression, who suffers from ADHD, who suffers from OCD, or any other of the known illnesses or unknown illnesses that are out there, you're not gonna understand. And I don't expect people to understand. Let me actually put that out there right now. I don't expect my neurotypical friends and family to understand what I'm going through. But I do expect you to take initiative in learning what I go through, which is a perfect segue into why a lot of neurotypical people don't talk about mental illness either. It's not understood. It's just not. It's not something that can be measured. It's not something that is tangible. What I mean is, if you see a person has broken their arm, you can understand the pain that they're in because you see the pain that they're in. You see that their arm is in a cast. You see that they may have had to stay in a hospital. You see the fact they take painkillers. You know, if they move a certain way, that they are going to be wincing in pain. So it's something that's tangible. It's something you can put a measurement on. Therefore, people are able to accept that kind of, damage or that type of trauma a little bit faster than they can accept the trauma that comes from mental damage. And because we all suffer differently, it's just one of those other things that makes it difficult to really understand, because again, there are certain symptoms of BPD that are shown to kind of be the criteria in which you are diagnosed under that. However, like I said, a couple of those things I don't actually identify with. One of the symptoms is explosive bouts of rage. And again, I don't have those moments very often, if I have them at all. I can maybe count 2 or 3 times with maybe 2 people that I've ever had those moments. But my majority of my rage moments are implosive moments. When I'm extremely upset, I don't yell, I don't scream. I mostly stay to myself and I cry and I cry and I cry. One other thing I want to mention that has greatly disturbed me, regardless if it comes from a sufferer or someone who is neurotypical, is basically don't talk about it. I've heard people say, I wouldn't have told anybody that. And to that I say, why? Why should I be made to hide the fact that I'm sick? I've noticed mainly in the Black community. By the way, if you didn't know, I'm Black. Surprise! Sorry, but seriously. I have noticed in the Black community specifically, just because of growing up around everyone and having friends and things like that, that when it comes to mental health, it's not something that's greatly or widely discussed. I've heard a lot of times from luckily not from my specific family members, but from just people in general, seeking therapy and seeking psychiatry help and, going to a therapist is a white person thing. And that's ridiculous, in my opinion. Even when I went to go get my psychiatric evaluation last year, the lady that conducted the interview had told my husband, that unfortunately in the Black community, we end up in these positions because it's just not something that is discussed. We don't talk about the traumas that we suffer or the things that we go through. For some reason, it's this thing or this just notion to keep things hush hush in a way. And so we grow up never learning excuse me, we grow up never learning how to actually express or handle these emotions as they come, because supposedly, we've been conditioned to just ignore it, or to just get over it, or, toughen up, or whatever you want to put on it. We've never been taught to actually face our problems, but always how to go around them. So, with all that being said, we just need to start talking about this. We need to just actually make this a topic of conversation. Not just because I actually suffer from a diagnosis of mental illness, but mainly because there are others out there suffering, regardless if it's diagnosed or not, and regardless if it's considered as severe as maybe my illness may be considered. People are out here suffering, and we all need a voice. We all need to be able to say that I can get help for what I'm trying to work through. And above all, we need to recognize it for what it is. Mental illness is an illness. Just like you would treat a cold, that's the same thing we do when we're trying to treat what we're going through. We take medications for mood swings, just like you take medications to boost your immune system when you have a cold. If you take Advil to get rid of a headache, I'm taking Klonopin to get rid of my anxious jitters. It's the same thing. Unfortunately, like I said in the beginning, because there is no measurement on the level of how much it affects each of us individually, there is no exact way to go about handling it. So to all my neurotypical friends, or anyone who hasn't been diagnosed, and even to all my sunflowers, guys, let's, get together to talk about this and figure out how we can help each other. Mainly to my neurotypical friends, let's work together to be more understanding of when your friend is really suffering and when your friend really needs you. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more videos in the future. Again, I am always down for suggestions on any other topics that you may want to discuss. So anything you want to, have me talk about, let me know down in the comments below. Make sure to follow me on social media. Definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. Stupid fly. Anyway, follow me on social media, follow me on Instagram, follow my Facebook page, follow my Pinterest page, and most definitely make sure you join the blog and become a sunflower. Again, thank you guys so much for all your love and support. Remember, stay square, sunflowers, and I love you.